My name is Percy Jackson.
There is no bigger hero or divine intervention to come to our rescue. We have to take care of our own.
All right, everybody, we made it to the season 2 finale, for better or for worse, which we are going to talk about. Like most of the fandom, even we had a very mixed, like, kind of response to this. So I think this will be an interesting discussion. But one thing I kind of want to say before I get going is, like, honestly, because of how much stuff changed in this, both stances are valid, and we don't need people picking sides between us, either with, like, us having opposite opinions here, because, like, that's not what this is about, you know?
I guess. People are
I
going to
don't,
do that anyway.
they're gonna do it anyway, but I mean, just telling them that is not our goal here is kind of, something I want to stress here, because I do think both are valid for their own reasons.
Hmm.
Yeah, so to get into the finale, we start off and it kind of chops us up into, like, showing us this bit of Thalia's, like, final stand again. So we see part of the scene replayed that feels like we've seen already. Thalia sends Luke ahead. She says, "You go, you take Annabeth," and we see that her last words to Luke are, "We take care of our own," which I thought is kind of significant. Um, and her goal here is, like, I'm going to slow down the Furies. I can do this alone, kind of thing.
I don't know.
Yeah, it feels weird that Luke would just be like, "Okay, cool, go up against the Furies by yourself." But
Yeah.
here we are.
That's
Um,
always been what I've thought about that is like, can you imagine Percy fighting anything and his friends just being like, it's fine. Like, even when he was going to fight Ares in the finale last year, they, he had to like convince them to not try to stop him and that he would be okay. And they were still terrified the entire time, of course. And
mhm.
then at the very end, when he was going to go talk to Zeus again, they were convincing him to stay. And they were like, he's going to kill you. And he was like, I have to go anyway. But they like tried, they really tried to make
Yeah,
him
Echidna
stay.
too.
And
Echidna's kind
so,
of like another episode of him doing that, of him being like, "I'm gonna do this," while he's poisoned and stuff, and they're
mhm,
like mad that he shuts them out of the room.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I feel like it's very emblematic of who Luke is, that he was willing to just, like, "Okay, I'll stand back, let you do all the work," kind of thing, even though Thalia is somebody we're supposed to think he cares about so much.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I realize that they changed everything. And
Mhm.
so I guess their way of figuring that out was just by having neither one of them there at all, um, so that they didn't know anything. So I guess they had to come up with something of why they wouldn't be there, because it is
Yeah,
weird. Like, in at least the idea I always got from the books was that he was there when it happened, and that Annabeth was there when it happened, but they were trying to protect Annabeth from what actually happened. But it seemed like he was there, and that was part of what made him so angry, was that he was there and saw her die. It sounds so weird to say now, because I thought that the reason why he was so sure that Annabeth was going to die in episode 6 was because he saw Thalia die, but he didn't actually see Thalia die.
yeah.
So I don't know why he was so sure about that. Besides, like, I know they had him, like, listen to her heartbeat, but I'm like, would a demigod like Luke just know what that would mean? that
I don't
someone
think
was
he
gonna
did.
die just from listening to their heartbeat? Like, I don't know. Like, you're supposed to just believe it in the scene, but I just don't believe anything he does. And so that is now even more confusing.
Yeah, the way that I'm choosing to see him going anyway is just, like, we see this type of cowardice in him a lot, over the time periods of him just being willing to let other people take on the work for him so that he can then get the chaos of the work being done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we cut from that little flashback to back to the car, which this is something we had talked about with last episode, where Sally seems to be the only one noticing that Percy's like crashing out while they're in the car.
Hmm.
And, we get her actually like, hey, what's going on? And before they can actually even talk about it, though, Blackjack is standing in the middle of the road,
Hmm.
and Percy's just like, hold up, I know him. And I love Virginia's acting here because she's like, he knows him. Okay.
Yeah.
Like trying to calm herself down.
Poor Sally.
Yeah, so while Percy's away talking to Blackjack, which like kudos to Walker's acting there where he's like ad-libbing, like he's making arm gestures and stuff at Blackjack.
Hmm.
Um, Annabeth says that Thalia will help Percy carry the burden. She doesn't say of what, but Tyson, being, so innocent, is like, oh, you mean the prophecy? And Sally's like, what prophecy?
I
Yeah.
don't. I never know if I want her to know about everything or not because I feel like it would be horrendous for her to be aware of how bad things
Mhm.
actually are. Like she knows that things are obviously bad. She sees what happens to him when he comes home and what he doesn't tell her, but it would be way worse to actually know.
Yeah, yeah, it would be so terrifying to know as a mom. Like that's where I think it would be it's almost a protective thing that she's probably not going to hear the entire prophecy even when she does find out more about it.
Hmm.
Because I mean we see what her instinct is as a mom. She wants to go with them. When Percy gets back to the car, he relays Blackjack's message, which is Clarice, took off on foot because there was a bunch of monsters around. So as the kids are ready to run into camp, Sally's like, I'm coming with you, which, girly, how are you getting over the barrier? And Percy has to remind her, it wasn't too far from here that I saw the Minotaur take you. So I can't have this happen to you again.
Perseus, listen to me. You are not broken. You're a miracle. And you are my son.
That was a really good scene. They both did a really great job to make that real. That like, yeah, he thought he saw his mom die. The last thing he's gonna do is bring her back to where she could die again. She could be let into camp the same way that Tyson was at this point. They've made that a part of the show, but no way is he gonna want his mom to be around for all of this stuff. That's scary. Let's not do
Exactly.
that. Um,
Before we say goodbye to Sally, though, Percy brings back up her dream from episode 1, which he says that he now is interpreting her dream to be that the drachma represents him and Thalia. That, like the double-sided thing is supposed to be him and Thalia being the same side of, or different sides of the same coin.
they actually are.
Yeah, they
Like
are in a lot of ways, but
I
she's
was
not Kronos' girl.
no, I was laughing about seeing edits of them using that, and I was like, those two actually are the same side of the different sides of the same coin or whatever. For once, that's actually correct for the two of them,
Mhm.
instead of people saying it for Percy and Luke for once. But I will say this is one of the million things I didn't like about this episode, and it's such a big part of Thalia. I hate that they hurt their entire story is that Thalia is scary.
Yeah.
I really despise that. I really despise the fact that the whole thing. I really hate the fact that he's sitting there saying, I thought that it was the two sides of me. I thought a part of me was bad and that a part of
Mhm.
me was like Kronos. That's already something that I really don't like that they never really fixed. But that can be discussed later on. But just with this, I really don't like it at all. That her
Yeah.
storyline has turned into that there's something like bad about, or that she's like dangerous and scary. Like the writer of this
Mhm.
episode did an interview where they said that they did certain things so that Percy would be afraid of her. And I was just like, this
Yeah.
is not what I thought at all was going to happen, and it's not how I saw them in the books at all either. And it's just not what I thought they were. It's just not what I thought they were going to do with her, and it just makes me sad that
Mhm.
all of the scenes. The thing that made me sad most about it in this episode, before we even get to like the end, is that I just kept thinking of all of those scenes this entire season of Luke saying that Thalia would join Kronos if she could and burn down Olympus, and Percy and Annabeth being so afraid of her and being afraid that she would join Luke, and Percy just straight out being afraid of her. And those scenes are
Mhm.
supposed to be right. Like
I don't think they
Luke
are.
is.
And
I don't
that's
know
the
how else
thing.
to interpret it. How is Luke not right? He's right. They're making it sound like
The
she's right. He's right. Like, how is he wrong?
Yeah.
He's
I
right.
guess where it's gonna come down to is whatever they do in Titan's Curse, right? Because I think what they're trying to do with this is they're trying to set it up for it to be more of a choice between will she join Luke's side or will she join like Percy's side. Whereas in the books, it's like I feel like it was never a question that she was going to join Luke's side, other than that like brief moment where she's tempted with Bessie. Like other than that, I never got the impression that she was going to just like, you know, be okay with everything Luke was doing. I more saw her attitude towards Luke in Titan's Curse similar to Annabeth's of like, well, something happened and we just need to get him by himself again, which of course we know isn't even really true. Like, you can get him by himself, but he's just gonna try to turn you to his side. Um, so I don't know. I feel like we're gonna go in with more of a feeling of like, where she's gonna have to come to terms with who she was before, what what happened while she became a tree, and like what that means for the present. So I don't know. It feels like a bigger wave having to deal with it than just kicking him down a mountain eventually.
I guess. I just hate that this is her story at all. That her story, that they're
Yeah.
making her this scary person, and that her story. I really liked her story in Titan's Curse and the books afterwards, and now it's turned into, instead of it being like this a story about how Zeus and Poseidon kids deal with different things and struggle with it, and that she struggles with her anger but she's able to control it, as opposed to how Luke is not able to control his at all and is able to like
Mhm.
make good choices to make sure that she doesn't get tempted by those sort of things in the future, because she knows that she can hurt people and doesn't want to. When he didn't do that stuff, instead it's just become she's scary. And I don't know why her story has turned into her being an actual threat to join Luke suddenly, more than it already was. Like, I don't know why that needed to be more, because she's already really close to him, and they made them more romantic than they did in the book, since they're both the same age this time, instead of her being younger and then aging weirdly when she was not around and stuff. And so I don't understand why. And we only have this episode to go off of, so I don't understand. Maybe when we actually watch the episodes, it'll make more sense, but that's not until probably December. And so at this point, I just don't get it. I don't get why they made her story this ooh, what if she turns skits out and turns back? It reminds me of stuff that I really don't like it when shows do stuff
Yeah.
like this, or movies. They did the same thing with Bucky Barnes, and I from Marvel, and I absolutely despise the way that Marvel treats that character the same sort of way. They still treat him like he's gonna one day just like turn bad, when the whole reason why he was quote unquote bad was because he was tortured. And so it just reminds
Mhm.
me of that idea of it just feels weird to think of her like this, because I never thought of her like that. I didn't think that
Yeah.
them ramping up to season 3 meant that they were gonna try to make the Percy and Thalia dynamic actually scary. I didn't think that's what they meant. And that's clearly what
Yeah,
they
and
meant. But I
I
didn't
mean
think
it's
so.
interesting because I'm currently in the still in kind of the intro of Titan's Curse with William. Like I want to say where we're at, they've gotten to camp, but we haven't even gotten to capture the flag yet.
Hmm.
And their dynamic is in Titan's Curse. It's more like they're so similar that they can't get along because they're so similar. One of those kinds of things of like because they're so similar, they just rub each other the wrong way. Um, and I feel like maybe like that'll come into play in Titan's Curse again. Um, but yeah, all of this is going to hinge on what potentially they're going to write happens between the end of this episode and when Titan's Curse starts. Like they really are hinging a lot of how this is going to go from here on out on that part.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
Yes. So we cut back to camp at this point, and Tantalus, he is having all of the campers clean up the like chariot circuit like track thing, and Chris Rodriguez is one of the people out there, and he gets in, basically starts yelling at Tantalus because, like, hey, why are we doing this? There's monsters. And he has a Lystragonians club, drops it to be like, look, there's still monsters around. Why are we cleaning this chariot track? It doesn't matter. And Tantalus goes on this stupid rant about war back in his days and what it was actually like and blah blah blah. And at some point during this rant picks up a turkey leg which doesn't fly out of his hand and he's like excited, my curse has been lifted. Then all of a sudden he gets hit by Lystragonian's fiery dodgeball.
Hmm. That was fun
And
watching him
yeah,
die.
it was, and it's kind of interesting too because Tantalus isn't a monster, but he's kind of also an eternal being. So I don't know if this is dying, or if it's he disintegrates in a similar way to monsters and he's back in the underworld after
I
this. It's so weird because yeah,
I assume so, because he was already dead, and they just like brought him out of
yeah,
there to be camp counselor for a little bit, I guess. Um,
hmm,
I don't know. Either way, that was funny.
yeah. Um, okay, so then next we cut to Bronte and the group of guards that she's leading, holding basically the camp line up by the tree. And what is kind of interesting to note about just, seeing Bronte this way, because we eventually see what happens with this particular set of guards for camp, is that we all assumed maybe she's going to be one of the traitors because, like, why are we focusing on her so much? And that doesn't pay off in this episode. So, we don't find out if she was a traitor, and from the looks of it, she probably wasn't. But
Mm-mm.
regardless, like the scene was that she was holding up, like a bow and arrow because she was basically trying to, like hold back the Lystragonians that are on the outside of the border, throwing fireballs at them.
Hmm.
Um, so the kids come up to this scene. That Tyson, Annabeth, Grover, Percy, they're um they're all there and um as the like Annabeth's noticing and she's like, Bronte doesn't have enough people. She's probably so tired because she's holding this line. Tyson's like, I hear something, and it turns out to be Luke's entourage coming up in like moving vans and stuff. Um, but one thing that I think we both especially took note of was that his demigod army is mostly either older teens or adults. Like there's nobody there that looks like a child.
Mm-mm. They're all people that used to be at camp, or like are older people from camp if you're Chris Rodriguez. Um, but most of them, it seems like they're like grad people who graduated. Um, and That's very much not the kids that are at camp right now.
Luke says, "We will burn camp to the ground and anyone inside." Where he had given this whole speech about how, like, oh, the smart ones will join us if they know what they're doing, and like, where's that part of the plan, Luke? Where's the part of like, let's go in and try to recruit people to our side first before we start fighting everybody? That's just thrown out the window now, apparently.
I guess.
Alison wants to take out the tree. She's like, we got to make sure that there's no borders so that we can get our forces in. But Luke is insisting, like, that's basically the only thing he cares about here is the tree has to stand. Thalia has to be freed from the tree at the end of this. He says that she is the most powerful demigod alive, which is true. She is more powerful than Percy, even because of the Zeus connection.
The fact that Alison is the one that is like, no, we need to kill Thalia. I was like, I don't appreciate this at all. After watching the stuff that happened in this episode, I'm like, did they make up Alison so that she would do all the things that Luke's supposed to do, but they don't want Luke to do it for some reason? Because it seems like it, because everything that Alison does is all the things that Luke should be doing in this book, and it's all the things that he does in the Sea of Monsters book. He's completely for Kronos. He doesn't want Thalia to live if it means that his plan fails. Like, he doesn't care. Like, the ending scene in Sea of Monsters is brutal because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anybody or anything. And it is so clear to show where he's at so that you understand how scary it is that Annabeth is being hurt by him for the majority of the third book. And so, but in this one, he's not doing any of those same things. Even when he's talking about, like, yeah, we're going to wipe out camp, he's like wanting to save Thalia. And Thalia is the character that the audience cares about more. Like, the kids at camp are obviously horrible, but we don't know any of them. The emotional, like, reaction you're going to have is the fact that he still wants to save Thalia. And so it's like, what do you mean he wants to save Thalia? Do you guys know that he's supposed to be the villain? Like, do you understand? Okay, this is like a random thing that happened to me today, but I was like, okay, now I understand, and this really sucks. But at least now I think I understand, and it makes me really sad, but I get it. I was watching just another person's YouTube channel, somebody who I've watched since like 2016 that makes content about like books and stuff. And they were it was like a random video I was just watching today. And they mention in it that they were watching Black Sails, which is the TV show that the showrunners that are in charge of this show did before they did this show. People love Black Sails. I've heard a lot of other people who have nothing to do with this show talk about how well done of a show it is. And I guess it had really good diversity in their cast too, so it made sense that they brought that over onto this show too. But the way that she summed up Black Sails, like, the person whose video I was watching liked Black Sails so much that she like started watching it all over again from the beginning as soon as it ended. And she said the reason why she liked it is because Black Sails is a show that talks about how revolution is necessary in order for like people to survive or something like that. And she was talking about how there was like a character that was a villain in the beginning that you really like at the end. And I was like, this show thinks that Luke is a revolutionary. Charlie Bushnell says that he thinks he's playing a revolutionary in interviews. It's very obvious after watching the last 2 episodes, especially of this season, that between Luke and Percy, they're presenting Luke as a revolutionary instead of Percy. I don't know why they're doing that, but they clearly are. And so when I watched that, I was like, okay, you're never going to do what I want. Like, I need to go and like sit in a corner and cry or something for a while because I'm never going to get the storyline that I actually want from Luke in this show. It's never going to happen. They're talking about him as if he's a revolutionary. He's not. In the book, he's not. He's pretending to be one. but they're treating him like he actually is one this time. And I don't know what that means. Like, I have no idea what Luke is going to do from this point
Yeah.
forward. Like, at this point, I'm like, are they going to have Alison be the one torturing Annabeth in the next season so he doesn't have to do it? Because
I hope not.
I honestly, I don't know. Luke's character doesn't seem like he's in a place where you would believe that he would torture Annabeth.
Mhm.
Like by the end of this episode, it's going to seem like a wild like shift if he's suddenly doing that, when in this episode he was like, we have to go save Thalia. And in the episode before that, he was sad and betrayed because Annabeth lied to him. And
Yeah.
so it's like they didn't show him being capable of something like that in this episode. I don't know. And once I heard her say that, I was just like, okay. Like, at least now I know why these scenes are happening that are kind of right, but never feel like, at least this season, don't feel like fully right. Like how they should be with him.
Mhm.
I don't know. If they
Yeah.
actually think he's a revolutionary.
I mean,
And
the
that's just
words
like,
like Tatiana used for Allison were like that she's his anger translator, which is what like it does feel like that. Like as you said, like she's doing a lot of the things that Buck Luke would have done. She's the one who's brutal. She's the one who's like kind of take no prisoners, give no fucks kind of
well,
thing
yeah,
that we see from in the books.
the fandom is so mad at Allison. Like
Hmm.
everywhere I go, like no matter what app I'm on, everybody wants Allison to die. Everyone was sad that she didn't die. I'm like the random one, the one that's different, not wanting her to die because
Yeah.
I want to see like her perspective still as somebody who's part of his team. But I look at Allison as a reflection of what his leadership is like. They don't really ever
Hmm.
bring that up though, necessarily in the show. Like Annabeth doesn't bring that up. It's just people
Hmm.
just hate Allison individually outside
Yeah.
of outside of him. And it's like this anger that everyone feels at Allison, this is how angry you should be at Luke.
Hmm.
That's how angry you should be at him, but none of that anger is being directed at him the way that it should be. Um it's just not. It's
Yeah.
directed at her instead, and it's just I feel bad I feel bad in a weird way for the character of Allison, because
Mhm.
it's like she was this new character that was created and now everyone basically hates her all the time. I hope that they find a way to make something, even if she's always like an antagonist, they're a good antagonist that you can still appreciate. Um
Mhm.
and so I want there to be something to her other than that. But at least
Mhm.
so far, that seems to be what she's doing, is kind of being the one to say all the stuff that, like, because like what I said on both of our podcasts that we did last week, she was right when she said that Annabeth is the enemy. She is the enemy, guys. They're
Mhm.
Kronos' army. Luke is the head of Kronos' army who's trying to annihilate everybody off the planet. Annabeth and her friends are trying to fight against what he's trying to do every single second that she's awake. Like, she is
Mhm.
definitely the enemy. Um, but people are so mad at Alison that they're just mad at her, and they're not thinking about that. Like, I saw somebody on Twitter the other day making the point that Luke in the third episode is just calmly, very rationally talking about how they're going to kill everybody on the planet.
Mhm.
And that's it. Like, yeah, we're going to kill everybody at camp, and then we're going to kill every mortal on Earth. And that's the end of that, and you should join me anyway. But it's like people aren't like paying attention to those things because the way that they wrote that just doesn't bring attention to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make, because people like Percy and Annabeth bring it up, but they don't talk about it enough to really make a point of like, he wants to kill everybody on the planet. Like, he wants to
Mhm.
kill his mother. His mother
Yeah,
is
and that
is immortal. Remember, guys? Like, that was like, I kept thinking about that when we read The Last Olympian. Like, if Luke's plan would work, his mother would be dead. she would die alone in a house. Like, how is this okay?
Yeah, I want to say like there's a lot of inconsistency with how Luke acts even in this one. So
Mhm.
there's ground they can make up, right? There is still ground they can make up with however they choose to handle his character in Titan's Curse, because like the scene that me and William read last night was when Annabeth actually takes over holding the world.
Mhm.
And you know how he tricks her into it. It's almost like the Charlie we see, or sorry, the Luke we see from Charlie in this season, where it's very like, "Help me, please, please! It's gonna
Yeah.
crush me. I'm gonna die." And then it switches the moment that Annabeth takes on the burden, and she's like, "Okay, but you gotta help me now." And he's like, well, try not to die. Bye."
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's the scene that people always reference for him
yeah.
being just like evil. That's why I'm like, I don't know if they're gonna actually have him do that or not, or like how that's gonna go now.
Yeah.
I guess we'll
Yeah,
see.
I will say I'm also with you on I'm glad Allison didn't die. I want to know more about her story. They definitely made her an intriguing character. One of those ones you love to hate kind of thing. So I'm glad she made it through the finale weirdly, but also like I still hate her.
And I honestly like the idea. Um, Luke should be with Annabeth on, Mount Tam, for or wherever they are,
Hmm.
for next season. And so I just like the idea that there's the potential at least to show her on like the actual
Hmm.
Andromeda. And I just like the idea of being able
Yes.
to show kind of the different people and monsters there that are they would not be calm. And so I'm just imagining that she would have to try to like handle them and what she would think about whatever their plan is or like what they're doing or and all that kind of it just is an interesting idea to have some insight into Luke's side because it does by the time you get to the
Hmm.
end of The Last Olympian is very chaotic. Kronos' army is terrified, along with, a lot of them are. And even the hardcore ones don't really seem to know what the heck is going on because Kronos Luke is acting like really weird by then. And so it just makes me wonder what they can show with somebody like her. And I just don't
Yes.
want it to go away, I guess. And it's not. So there's that. But um, is the next part when he pronounces his name that everybody forgot about?
No, it's not. So next we have Clarice. Like we actually see where she's at. She runs into camp and she runs into a group of guards that is led by Chris. And kind of how they run into her is one of them shoots an arrow right past her, and then she's like, "Wait, guys, it's me." And she asked them for an escort, but they're like, "We got to hold the line for camp. There's monsters all around." But she shows them she has the fleece, and that's when they're like, "Okay, we will escort you." Before it switches back to Annabeth and Percy kind of talking about Thalia.
Okay. Oh yeah, and this was when Percy was saying to Annabeth that when Thalia comes back, she'll have to choose between
Mhm.
you and Luke um and he says like you don't understand what that is like. I saw some people commenting on that of like what how could he say that? And I'm like because she doesn't know what it's like. She
Yeah.
doesn't know what it's like. Like from Percy's perspective, like from Annabeth's perspective, she loves Thalia and Luke, but Luke is also like actually nice to her. Like he doesn't treat her like
Hmm.
everyone else, which is the creepy part of that, of course, because he's 20 and she's
Hmm.
13. But still, it's a very different thing for Percy to have experienced what he did with Luke at the end of the first season and then have her still talking to
Hmm.
him and trying to like work things out with him and stuff. It's a very different position to be in when one of the people like really wants to kill you really wants to hurt you, has like
Yeah.
obvious contempt for you, like hates your guts. And this person that you care about and love for, no matter, it's not romantic love at all yet, but still, like, they still love each other, friends love each other. And so it's hard to know that they feel that way about someone that wants you to die and wants you to go away forever. That's just,
Yeah.
it's a different feeling. And so it's just complicated. And I will say, I don't think Annabeth is thinking about that at all, about how complicated this could all
No.
get. She just wants to see, and I understand why she's not. She just wants to see Thalia again. But it is like a whole thing, and that is real, that it could be real weird.
Yeah, it would be really weird for her. And I mean, that's something we talked about when we were speculating what happens with the final battle of like her seeing Luke actually standing up against campers, even of like, how would she feel about that? Would she automatically try to protect Luke because that's the last thing she was trying to do before she got turned into a tree, anyways?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so Annabeth being naive to Thalia, like how hard that choice is going to be, and the fact that she's just like automatically, no, of course Thalia's going to be on our side. Um, I also chalk a little bit of that up to the fact that because she was so little and Thalia was this like really big protector in her life, that it's hard for her to think of her not being in that role. And so, of course, with this
Hmm.
war going on, with Annabeth already having chosen her side, why wouldn't Thalia choose to keep protecting her?
Hmm.
So the kids decide on their plan. Annabeth and Grover want to go after the fleece because Grover can smell the fleece, and Percy and Annabeth want to go and help out all of the people trying to hold off the monsters. But then they're met by another guard like group, and I don't know if the Ellis kid that's the head of it is supposed to be an Ares kid because he makes kind of a mention of them stealing the quest and wants to take
Hmm.
them prisoner.
Hmm.
Percy's like, he fights it at first, but he's like, okay, fine, take me to Tantalus. And of course, they have to tell him there's no more Tantalus. And it's just Mr. D left, who's sitting there singing. This is a reference from the book, but I am my own great, 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 great grandpa.
That was funny.
It's just like, it was pretty silly to have him sitting there singing it, but of course, Mr. D is also being extremely frustrating at the same time because Percy's trying to tell him Kronos' army is coming and like they're gonna storm the camp. They have a bunch of monsters, and he's like, okay, so um and like when Percy's like, this is gonna affect you too, bro. He basically dismisses them. He's like, is there a Titan here now? Okay, well, you kids have to settle your differences on your own. And Percy's
Hmm.
just like, settle our differences. Like, this is bigger than that.
Yeah, because this is just like an argument. Yeah, that's what's going on here.
Yeah, but it prompts Percy into, as the kids kept calling it in the podcast, a Braveheart speech, um, where I want to read out his actual speech because I feel like this is so applicable to everything going on in the world right now.
Hmm.
So he says, we all grew up hearing these stories about heroes. You think that story, that quest, that prophecy, it's got to be about someone else, but it's not. It's just us. There's no bigger hero or divine intervention to come to our rescue. We have to take care of our own because that's what real heroes do. We stand up for each other, we stand up for our home. And I don't know about you guys, but where me and Shannon are, we're kind of like close to some of the stuff happening with ICE recently. And that's kind of what came to mind for me of just like, there's nobody coming to help. There's nobody that's going to stop this because unfortunately it's coming from the top. So like we have to take care of each other right now.
Yeah, I feel like that's. I live in Wisconsin, and so it's very, like, a lot of people are noticing Minnesota or Minnesota in general, like right now, but
Hmm.
generally the upper Midwest, that's just kind of how we do things. That's why earlier in about a year ago when Elon Musk tried to come here to Wisconsin and like steal an election, it blew up in his face like spectacularly. Like people who were not planning to vote, like we had more votes in that Supreme Court election than we did in our last governor election because people voted just to spite him. Like like counties that had never voted against like the Democratic Party or voted for the Democratic Party went to vote for them because they were so mad at him coming here and trying to tell us what to do. People in this part of the Midwest, especially, we despise, absolutely despise when people try to come here and act like they know more than us, because that's how most people talk to us. Like they think that we don't know what we're doing or we don't know what we're talking about or whatever. And people from like the coast can just come in and just railroad us. That doesn't work. And so the stuff that's happening in Minnesota is the thing. I was like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're used to people coming in here and trying to run us over. And that's just also just been like the only way I've known how to like exist in my life, at least. I never once in my life thought that a higher power would ever come help me, not even one time. And so that's just how I've always approached life. That's why the focus for me has always tried to been like build like some sort of community or something somewhere. And just been looking for a way to do that because that's just how I'm like, this is the only way that any one of us is going to survive, because the people that are supposed to help us are not going to do it. If we sit back and wait for them to do it, we're just going to die. And so like, we're going to have to, that's not easy to try to do, but it's the only way. And so I really did like his speech. It's like kind of what I've always kind of said about Percy is that one of the things I said a lot when we were reading the first 5 books is one of the things people say is that like, oh, Luke doing all this stuff is what made Percy possible to like do the things that he did at the end. And my big like thing with that is always that you don't know that because you don't know what Percy could have done and the other demigods could have done together if he wasn't derailing everything by forcing them to be in this cycle of death and destruction for 4 years. And that's something that I've learned from therapy, which is that like, I'm not thankful for anything that anybody who ever hurt me ever did to me. And they didn't teach me anything about myself. They just made my life harder. I could be doing the same things that I'm doing right now, and I would be doing it better because I wouldn't have all of these other things that I have to fight against all the time. I could just be doing them. Like in another world, I could have, gone to college and actually gotten a degree in something that I cared about. I could have done like something like therapy, social work, worked in like, done like creative writing like I always wanted to do. But I never did any of those things. And I might end up doing them one day, but it's like 40 years after I would have done it. And so that's always like the thing I always say about Luke is like, he just makes everything happen way later and makes it a lot more complicated for when they do start doing those things to make it work because he, traumatized all these kids by everything that he put them through. And so it was really nice to have Percy be able to do a speech like that to show like, yeah, imagine how much better everything would have gone if the demigods could have just worked together the whole time. Percy is Percy. He still would have shown up and pushed the gods to like the brink as far as he could to get them to do what he wanted, because that's his whole personality. And if Luke wasn't causing all these people to like switch sides and fight and stuff, it would have been a lot easier. Like imagine the games they could have played on Zeus, with him like messing with him on purpose all the time. If like, if they weren't having to worry about like people, being moles and turning against them and hurting them and all these other things that happened for the next few years or so. I'm trying to remember the kids in the scene is a character from the Trials of Apollo book. Books. And so I don't know who it is yet. I know her name because I've seen people mention her before, but people said it often enough when I posted pictures of how young the kids were in this, when he was giving the speech, because some of them look like they're 10. all of them are young, including Percy and Annabeth, but but a couple of them look really little. And one of the ones that look really young, she's a girl that has like green hair, like dyed at like the bottom of her hair. And that's Kayla Knowles, which is a character that is in all of the Trials of Apollo books, which is many years. Percy's 13. Those books happen when he's like around 18. Like those books actually happen past the books that are coming out right now of him trying to go to college and stuff. And so she's in those books as a character when she's older. And so a lot of people were like, oh my God, that's little Kayla. And were like excited to see her. And so I wanted to make sure to point that out for people who didn't recognize her, that that's who that's supposed to be. That's fun that they did that.
I mean, this is where we point out, like, for like one of the 10 million times we will, that the people fighting these adult demigods and monsters coming in are children. They are very much children, more so visually than any of the demigods on Luke's side. So we get a very brief scene of Luke leading the rogue demigods across the barrier because they can get through the barrier just fine, and them taking on Bronte's guard. Before we jump back to Clarice, who's now walking around with Chris and trying to like assess the situation by asking him questions on like what's going on.
One thing with Luke coming in like that I wanted to mention is the way people freaked out about the way he said his last name. That was the way that Rick pronounces it. He did. Remember after season 1 aired at some point.
Castellan versus Castellan.
Yeah, Rick did an interview after season 1 aired. I remember where he said it for the first time, really, and people were like, "That's." I think he's saying it in the Latino or Hispanic sounding way. That's like what it sounded like to me. Even if Luke is not played by a Hispanic actor, that's what it seemed like, and it makes sense. Rick grew up in Texas, that he would name his character something like that instead of like just the white name, the white way to say it, basically, of how most people have pronounced. Like that's how I pronounced it in my head. I don't know if I'll ever pronounce it the right way now. Like it's been too long. But other than that, this episode, one of the things I will say is that it felt similar to the last one to me in the way that it felt like they didn't have any time for like emotional scenes to really like kind of like land, because Disney is like trying to, I want to fight Disney corporate. Why are you being like this? Not giving them any money. Something comes up later on that I didn't tell you about, because I wanted to see what your reaction would be later on in the episode of something that they cut out, and it's just makes stupid that they cut it out, because it fixes an obvious like problem within the story that I was like, what do you mean that happened? But it's because they made them cut it just for budget. And so one of the things that made me think of was this part with Luke when he lets himself in, basically. And he says, like, oh, demigods can get into camp. They don't need, even with the barrier up. And I was like, so why did you do everything that you did this season? If you can get into camp when the barrier is still up, why did you stab her tree? Why didn't you just do this when they were all gone? Like, why did you sit there on your ship, like, being a pool boy or whatever you were being on your cruise ship? Why didn't you go and do this when they were all gone trying to get the golden fleece? Like, what? Like, what do you mean that you can just get in? Like, you could have all done this when they were not even here to stop you. This is stupid. And so, like, this show usually doesn't make, like, obvious mistakes like that with, like, with things. And so I'm assuming that he probably said something else or did something else, but they had to, like, cut it out. And so they put that part in, because they usually don't make like silly like writing mistakes like that. Because when he said that, I was like, wait a second, that makes everything you did make you sound really not smart for this entire why would you wait until people can fight you if you could just go and kill all the kids without them there to stop you? And so I'm assuming that's what happened there too. Because I
Yeah,
was
he
just
could have
like, what?
led just the to Chris in the next part. And she is she's basically trying to find out what's been going on at camp, and Chris makes this remark of, well, some of us are concerned that there may be traitors around. And he uses this opportunity to kind of create confusion and chaos by like accusing the girl who shot the arrow that almost got Clarice of being a traitor. So her name is Katie. He like turns around like, show me your bow. Like for whatever reason, like her bow would show that she's somehow on the other team, which I didn't understand that part. Um, but yeah, as soon as everybody gets confused at like what's happening, he says now, and all of the people who actually are rogue demigods that are in his little guard team, they take down all of the other kids. And Clarice barely makes it out. Like she gets cut on the leg, runs towards the chariot track, and it seems like Chris is like fully intent on just taking her out now, which it's crazy considering that this is eventually going to turn into a romance. I don't love when, like an enemies to lovers involves something that dramatic. Um, but yeah, like the way that he was kind of ruthless with her, it was like, I don't want you guys to fall in love later.
I'm still interested to see like how they decide to show that, if they show any of that in season 3 or season 4, because I just think like no matter what Chris does right now,
Hmm.
he more than pays for it.
Yeah,
Um,
he does. That's true.
like very, very soon. And it's part of the, I don't know, I just always keep in the back of my head, like, this is the whole, like, nuance that people say that we should have for Luke more, but it is true with somebody like him that Luke, Chris Rodriguez is somebody that is an actual Hermes child.
Hmm.
I don't know that they have said that necessarily yet. He's in the Hermes cabin regardless. And
Hmm.
he's been there for all these years with Luke. He says when he's doing this that Luke has always like backed him up, or he always trusts him, and so
Hmm.
he goes with Luke, but he's left for dead in a place as scary as the labyrinth, and so he
Hmm.
learns pretty like brutally that Luke doesn't actually care about him, and so
Hmm.
it is I. I will say this one scene, the comment that I made just to myself was like, wow, what did Andrew Alvarez do that they shafted him for this season? Because Chris didn't have that many scenes. I was just like,
Yeah.
this is like his last scene of the episode. I thought that the like moles would do more, and I was like, damn, they didn't want him to do this. Like that's like just this one scene, I guess. Like they're probably thinking about the future, but I was like, damn, what did he do? He must have done
Yeah,
something.
and I wonder, like, even how much they reshot when they decided he wasn't Chris Rodriguez anymore,
Hmm.
because we have those scenes of him being one of Luke's henchmen on the boat. So, like, was there a scene where we saw that he was on Luke's side earlier and, like all of those scenes were old, like Chris Rodriguez scenes, and then he just doesn't have a name in what we see?
Hmm.
Who knows, right? But what I will say is, I actually really enjoyed this reveal of Chris because at first you are thinking like, is he gonna actually help her all the way? And when he finally turns, because we were all expecting it, it's like, oh my God, this scene is
Hmm.
really intense.
And then especially because he's like, oh, you don't have any friends. And
Yes.
she went through her, characterization journey this season. And so now she does have friends. And she gets
Hmm.
to immediately see why it's nice to have friends because they come
Yes.
in they're just they're looking for her because they're looking for the fleece, but also part of why they're looking for, not only just for the fleece, they're also looking for her. And
Yes.
so Grover and Annabeth are able to run in and get her out of there. And it's just nice to see her like smile at him, like, oh, I had character development, sir. I actually learned how to have like healthy relationships with people. And so
Hmm.
I don't that's not gonna happen anymore.
Yep.
One thing I did want to make a note of with this scene just quickly is that the character Katie made everybody, including me, have like a minor panic attack because we're like, did Disney just kill Katie Gardner? Because who is Katie? Who's Katie? She's the only Katie
Yeah.
that we know, and Katie Gardner is like mentioned in The Last Olympian, but I know she's also
Yeah.
in the Trials of Apollo books. And I was like, did they kill Katie Gardner? And then
Mhm.
our friend Sophia, she sent me a thing of the credits, a picture of the credits that show that she had a different last name. So they didn't kill Katie
Okay.
Gardner. If you're worried that they did that, they didn't do that. Thank God, because I was like, what? I don't want them to kill her. Don't kill Katie Gardner. I don't even know that
Yeah.
much about her, but please don't do that. But everyone was scared when they said her name was Katie that they killed a character that we actually know. And thank God. This
Yeah.
time it was just somebody made up. Her name was like Katie Ewer or whatever. YOO. For her name. But I was just like, oh my God. Chris
Yeah.
Rodriguez, do not kill somebody we actually know about. God.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But I really did enjoy the reveal. I loved, like so Annabeth and Grover come in on a chariot, which I thought was a great way to call back to the chariots because as I said in the books, we have two chariot scenes. And they have a second chariot race after everything's all fixed, like, okay, this is our celebration chariot race. So
Mhm.
this was a good way to call back to it without having to do a whole other chariot race scene, which I know is a pain in the ass to film.
Yeah. That would have taken 7,000 years.
Yes. So it's just Grover and Annabeth. Grover pulls the fleece away from Chris, which knocks him over, and Annabeth and Grover just both tell Clarice to get on, take her with them while they head towards the actual battle. So cutting back to the actual battle, this is where we see Luke showing the other demigods how to let monsters across the barrier, and luckily he only lets in one that we see before the Camp Half-Blood army shows up, led by Percy and Tyson.
Mm-hmm. Poseidon boys.
Yes, we love it. So yeah, and again, kids are significantly younger. We see people walk up to Daniel and Walker who are like a whole head
Yeah,
shorter
they're
than
like
him.
down here. They're so
Yes.
little.
So the battle itself is pretty ruthless, but I almost wonder if there could have been some better like choreography with it, because while we're seeing them slice up these like Camp Half-Blood kids, there's a lot of times where it looks like people are taking injuries, especially from Luke, where they should have fallen, but like they're still standing. So like I I would have to like find the specific frame, but there's somebody who he slices in the torso and they're still up after that. So I almost wonder if it's like just a choreography thing that he seems less brutal than he actually is. But I'll make note here that he's slicing up the demigod kids along with everybody else. He is not holding back in the battle.
Yeah, I will say this might be why this sort of thing happened. Walker did a couple interviews when he was in New York when he did the Jimmy Fallon show, and
Hmm.
where that came out after the finale had aired. And I don't know which one this was. I think it was TV Insider that he did the interview with, and but they asked him a question where they were told by somebody else that he came up with the whole thing that Luke should be more brutal with him. And he
Hmm.
does say, like, yeah, that was his idea. That's when I was like, what? That it was Walker's idea, that he read the script, and in the original script they just like hit each other a couple times and then it's over, and
Hmm.
Walker was like, he just tried to stab me in the last episode, shouldn't he like do more? And then they were like, oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea. And then they
Yeah, and
put
then
in
they
the
were like,
stuff,
we're gonna have him do the most because
and
okay,
then they
so
had
the
him
scene
like punch
between
him in the face a bunch of
yeah,
times basically. And so
repeatedly.
yeah, so since that wasn't originally in like the script when they originally wrote it, maybe they didn't have as much time to think of like choreography stuff with fighting to make that stuff,
Hmm.
because they did Walker also talked about in interviews that he made the point that, like, Percy, when he's going through the crowd of demigods and stuff, and even the people on Luke's team, he's trying to go, like, around them, like, trying to get past them when Luke is just, like, slashing them down, to show, like, the
Yes.
difference between the two. That Percy's never that brutal, like, ever, but even when he's older, but still, like, he, especially right now, would not have that, like, killer instinct like that when
Hmm.
Luke does. I know a lot of people made the point about the line that he says about, when he's going at Percy about, like, the police isn't here to heal you this time, and that whole thing. But either way, like, that's what I kind of figured with that, is that because they usually don't make mistakes like that with their fighting choreography. They usually spend a long time on it. And so since it was
Hmm.
something that Walker mentioned to the writers and they added it in, they probably didn't have as much time as they usually would to kind of figure
Yeah.
all that stuff out in the same way. That's what I'm assuming. But
Yeah.
I don't know. This part was like, I don't know how to feel about this stuff because it's just I really I didn't like watching him punch him in the face a million times, obviously.
No, I felt like I was so surprised that, through movie magic, they can make it look so realistic because I feel like I practically watched Percy's nose break in that moment.
Yeah. But it's also hard. It's hard for me because it doesn't feel as like bad as the scene in the book did. It doesn't feel like as like he's like scary in that way, because he is going for him a lot, and then Tyson comes in, which we'll say in a second. But I don't know, it's just it doesn't, and it purely may be because Disney is a bitch and only gave them 36 minutes for a finale episode, and so they don't have the time for them to like really show that stuff. It just always felt
Hmm.
like they had to like move on to the next thing, and so I didn't feel like I had enough time to really like really feel that, because it just didn't feel as bad. And
Yeah.
maybe it's because, like, yeah, his face is messed up, but the majority of what he's hurt by in this situation isn't actually Luke. It's Thalia, but by accident. But still, like, that's more what
Yes.
hurt him, really. And so it just feels, I don't know. It happens
I
so
don't know.
fast
For me,
that
it was brutal enough.
it
Like,
happens
because
so.
it,
I guess the thing
yeah.
that I felt in the moment was they made such a big like build up with the different trailers and the different discussions and things like that about Luke attacking camp, that when he
Hmm.
it happened so quickly that I was like, wait a second, like can we go back to that, or like talk about that more, or like show more of that, because it just went by so quickly that I didn't feel like it had like the emotional effect that you're supposed to have. But I don't think that was their
Hmm.
priority in this episode anyway, was Luke. Like, there's no way.
No, I mean, you could take out a lot of what Luke does in this episode and it would still be the same.
Yeah.
Luke is kind of a nothing burger in this episode because it's like he comes in, drops a few lines, slices up a few kids, punches Walker in the face or punches Percy in the face that he's out. Because yeah, so we see that moment. I will say the reason why I still saw it as very, very brutal, the like repeatedly punching him in the face part, is Cam Silas had talked about the fighting styles and
Hmm.
how like they really intentionally made Percy's belt off of Luke's because Luke was his first trainer with the sword. But at the same time, Luke, now that he's joined Kronos' side, he's not playing by the rules anymore. So, like Percy disarmed him, which would be the end of a single combat the way that he was taught. But then Luke's like, this isn't the end. I still got hands, bro. And just like swings at him
Yeah,
so
and
many times,
also,
like an ungodly amount of times.
yeah, and also like the point that I know Walker made in that TV Insider interview, I'm pretty sure, is that in season 1, when they had their fight in the finale, the thing that Luke did to him when he hurt him was he disarmed him. And so Percy does the same thing and is able to do the same thing to Luke. And so he's like, oh, I beat him this time. And then he just starts pile driving his face. And so because this Luke isn't going to stop. And that's kind of, I hope that people got that idea in this episode, even though Zeus overshadows every single thing possible
Yeah.
that Luke could ever do in this episode. Like, nobody's even talking about Luke at all after this episode because that's all they can talk about. And it's understandable why they can't like stop talking about that. But still, it's just that whole thing that I hope that people do remember that at some point, that like, you know, that he had that, the whole thing with Percy and Luke most of the time is that Luke has this like killer instinct that Percy just doesn't have. Like, even when he's fighting other monsters and stuff, he doesn't fully, he's not one that's out there like wanting to do that. He'll do it when he has to and stuff. And when somebody's trying to hurt them, he'll do it. But he doesn't have like that killer instinct where he just thinks about doing stuff like that so easily. In the way that people like Luke do. Like, oh, one thing from this episode I wanted, or not from this episode, but just in general, I wanted to bring up that I forgot to say last week was the whole thing of like Luke and Percy and talking about Percy's empathy. Because the people were talking about this idea of Percy shows, and he does, obviously, Percy shows empathy to a lot of the other like villains and stuff in the show, like Medusa and Cersei and pretty much everybody that they run into. He always talks to them and like gives them a chance before he hurts them or anything like that. And so the discussion was being had of like, what about, why doesn't Percy have that empathy for Luke? Like, why doesn't he try to like save Luke? And there's a bigger discussion you could have about the fact that Percy's a kid and he's a kid and Luke is an adult, and it's not a kid's responsibility to save an adult from themselves ever, never are you supposed to ever do that. That is the reason why people like us are in therapy for so long, because we felt like we should. You're not actually supposed to do that. But the bigger point, though, to make just purely for like storyline wise about the show is that is what the finale was last year. Like him talking to Luke in the woods was him doing that. Was him telling Luke like, this isn't you, this is Kronos. And every time Luke says we, he says like, stop saying we. Like, I don't want, and he's trying to convince Luke to not do this. Like, the whole reason why he starts fighting Luke is because he's trying to find a way to get him to not leave. He's trying to stop him from leaving so that he can try to stop this before it goes any further. And then when he's like, how much more clear can you get with like empathy and why he doesn't show more towards Luke than the fact that he's apologizing to him when he accidentally hurts him? He's in the middle of saying like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And Luke hurts him on purpose. Like, and stands over him holding up his knife about to kill him. Like, that's why he doesn't try to do that again. If you offered empathy to somebody, even when they're saying that they wanted to kill everyone that you ever met in the last couple of days of you being in this new world, and they hurt you when you were in the middle of apologizing to them, and then like was about to do something to you before someone stopped them, like, why would you ever put yourself in that position ever again? And it's just, Percy does have empathy for Luke. He has a lot of empathy for Luke. Throughout the books, you hear him thinking about, like, he understands why Luke is upset in a way, but not any of the things that he's actually doing. And I guess we have to say that because we're people that have gone no contact with our families. And the idea of like, if you aren't willing to like burn yourself alive to save somebody else, that means that you lack empathy for them, is factually incorrect. It's not even like, that's just your opinion. That is just factually incorrect. that no person who ever has gone no contact with anybody has ever done that because they don't have you have a lot. I have a lot of empathy for everyone in my
Yeah.
family, even the people that even my dad I have empathy for. That doesn't mean that I'm gonna like, you know, I mean, I actually did do that. Like try to save him from himself. That did not work at all. At all. But still, like that's not a good
Mhm.
idea. And it's you don't do that stuff because you don't care about them anymore. I've that just
Mhm.
I saw that being talked about and I was like, what's going on? That people think that Percy is ever lacking empathy. His problem is that he has too much, to the point that he doesn't want to hurt things that he's
Yes.
actually supposed to, because he has too much empathy. Like he's the one that's like convincing himself that he can hurt everybody at the end of the story, because he just doesn't want to. That's he's not the one in this story lacking empathy. Oh my god.
Yes, and I will say this for all of our viewers who are going through, because we've had people say they have a Luke in their life to us.
Yeah.
And so it's important for us to just stress the point that if somebody is trying to actively harm you, you don't have to have any empathy for them at all. Nobody is going to expect you to. You can just like that is not my problem when, like whenever you hear about why they are the way they are, it doesn't matter if they're trying to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
In that
And
moment, your safety is what's important.
yeah, like ironically, people talk a lot about like nuance with things, and this is one where you can understand that that person who might be trying to hurt you have gone through things, if you know about those things that they went through that were hard. But that doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you can't be upset with them or like not want to be around them when they're making your life harder. Like there's a million examples. I'll give one from like my actual life. Um, that is just one of those things that I just like really don't like thinking about, but it is just a true fact with like my dad, that when I was growing up and my dad was doing all the stuff that he was doing with just with me, much less ignoring the stuff he was doing with everyone else in his life. He was going to therapy like weekly. He had a weekly therapist.
Mhm.
He had a psychiatrist. One of the things that people who go through CSA don't like to really admit until we're talking about it, but it is a thing that a lot of us apparently do from stories that I've heard people say online, is that when it's the middle of the night and we can't sleep, we all go in the bathroom and just stare at ourselves in the mirror. And because I've heard like at least 5 different people say that they did that. and and I did that, and I would like
Mhm.
do that in the bathroom, and I would pick up his prescriptions. And I remember picking it up and seeing like Prozac on his prescription and just looking at it and being like, and thinking like, I wonder if this would make me feel better. And I say that kind of thing to say, like, when my
Mhm.
dad was doing all the CSA stuff with me and all the other stuff he was doing with me, like mentally and stuff, and all the other stuff he was doing with like my mom and my sister and everyone else that he ever met, and terrorizing everybody everywhere he went, he was seeing a therapist every single week. What do you think they talked about? Like, what do you think they talked about? I generally am like fascinated. What did they talk about? What did he think was happening? And what did his psychiatrist think was happening? Like he was quote unquote getting help. And he was doing all these things when he had a
Mhm.
therapist to talk to every single week when I didn't have anybody that I could talk to at
Yeah.
all. And so that's like probably a more like harsh example, but still, like, was I not supposed to be upset with him because he had a bad childhood too, and apparently needed a weekly therapy session to talk about it on top of when he would talk about it with when he was around
And
me
it was
too.
depressed enough to be on Prozac.
Yeah, and was
Like,
on like
yeah.
Prozac that he had like for like he was on all kinds of medication, like not just that one. He was on a bunch of other ones. That's just the one that I remember, because I think I saw like things on TV for it and stuff. But and then just outside of like my real life stories you hear about in like the news, the example I always give for people for Luke to understand like kind of how you can think about these two different things at the same time kind of thing is like when you hear stories about like mass shooters, like the one that I always think about is the kid in Michigan who did a school shooting when he was 15. This story makes me so angry because it, because the one where his parents got arrested and got sentenced to prison too, because they caught them, like them literally telling him to do it, and he like left a note like begging somebody to stop him and stuff, and the school didn't do anything. And he was very, very obvious. Like, that story made me so mad because like CPS was called on him when he was 9 because he went to one of his neighbors' houses asking for food because his parents left him alone without any food and he was starving, and they didn't do anything to help him. And that story with like parents that are like doing that to him on purpose, like trying to turn him into this hateful person so that he would go after the people that they don't like, which is what he eventually did. And that he didn't, it showed that there's a part of him that didn't want to do it because he was asking the school to like basically force himself not to, because he didn't actually want to. But that pressure can sometimes be a lot, especially from both, if both parents are doing it, and both of them were. People in that school shooting should not be nice to him. Like, they can understand that his parents are the reason why that happened and why he ended up in that place and why he did that. And that now, the thing that makes me mad about that story is that that person is never going to get like any of the help he actually needs to feel better. So that sort of thing never would have happened now, especially never now that he's in like prison like this. It's a total waste of life that his parents, did to him. But the people who were harmed by him should never say anything like that to him. That's not their responsibility. People like me can think that because that's just a story that I saw on the news, and I can picture how a kid like that could feel like that and could get stuck in a situation like that and be mad about the people that could have stopped it before it got that far. But his victims should not feel bad for him in a way that lessens his responsibility for showing up to school with a gun and trying to kill them and killing some of them. And so that's like what we try to say about this stuff is like, you can hold these two things at the same time. If there's somebody that's trying to hurt you, but you know that they've gone through something, everybody at one point or another has. A lot of people who do things like that have been introduced to it because of something that happened to them at some point in their life. But it doesn't mean that you just try to then save them from themselves, because you can't. That's why I love the story with Luke in the book so much, because Percy understands that he can't. And Annabeth eventually gets there too. Like, I know people look at that differently. But I personally look at that story as they backed off, and Luke in the end of The Last Olympian he's the one that needs to do something. It's not Percy who needs to realize anything. It's Luke. Like, Luke has to realize that what he's doing is wrong and he needs to stop it. Like, Kronos is in his actual body. He's the one that needs to make these decisions. He has to decide. They can't like help him that way. They can't help him out of the situation when he's willing to give himself over so completely to somebody else. Like, he has to decide, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Which is why I always like the ending with him, that he takes himself out, because it's literally, they just give it to him. But as soon as he says that he's willing to do it, like, Percy's gonna do it so that it finally ends. Like, that's what they've been wanting him to do, this, at least Percy. I think that's what Percy's wanted him to do this entire time, is to just finally stop all of this and stop it, because it's such a waste of all of this pain for no reason. And he finally does it. And that's like, I feel like what people need to keep in mind with this sort of stuff is that, like, just from life experience, you can't save abusive people. You can't even save people that you don't think are abusive, but you just know that they've been through bad things and they don't make you feel good. You can't save those people from themselves. They have to, you can tell them that you don't want them to be like this and that you're somebody that they know they could go to when they want to change, but you can't force them to, you can't get them to. You have to just back off. And it's really hard. I get it. But so much of society is built on this idea that you can run in and save somebody from themselves in that way. But it's just not true. and you end up with so much more trauma just within yourself from trying to do that. It's just a really bad idea. You're not responsible for other people's feelings. You're not. Not at all. And that's really what that is, of thinking that you can like control how somebody else feels.
Yeah.
And you can't. You got to let them figure it out on their own. No matter how hard it is, you just got to let them do it.
And with both of us being people who want no contact with our parents, we had 30 plus years of trying to give them the excuse of they have trauma, they have trauma, they have trauma. You know, like
Mhm.
we spent a good amount of time, decades, thinking that way. Decades of I can maybe save them if I approach them this way or this way or this way. It at some point you're just basically like you're hurting yourself more than you're doing any good to try to help them, and you at some point just have to drop the rope and be like, okay, this isn't my burden to carry anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, like I will say, just to give like a explanation, if anyone would be watching that would need one almost. Because one of the things that was really hard for me growing up is that so many people, basically everybody, was really focused on like saving my dad or like helping my dad in some way. Like he was the focus of so much. And one thing I want people to keep in mind, because it is horrible when you're the one being hurt by them the worst, that you're like, why everyone is so focused on him, the help is going to him and nobody's noticing me, because everyone is instead focused on him. Like you feel guilty about being mad at him because people talk about whatever with him. One thing I just want people to understand, like when there are people like my dad or like Luke or whoever, where they're more like violent, I guess is the best way to put it. The reason why that happens is because people are, there's such a like a scary person that they kind of have almost like no choice but to try to stop them and try to help them, because they're the cause of like every single problem that's happening. And so that's kind of why people get stuck in that pattern where they feel like he's such a dangerous, like with my dad, it was like he's such a dangerous person that they obviously felt like they needed to like deal with him first because he was the source of everything. And he was the source of every problem in my family, in in his siblings' families, with everybody. And so it creates, and like he was very good at like, controlling that, where like all these people were always trying to like help him or stop him in some way, and they weren't able to ever like get out of it and realize like, what are we doing? There were some times when my mom got breaks from him, but he always found a way to like pull her back in. And so that's just for people that might be stuck in that like spiral and be watching all these adults do that. That's part of why they're doing that when they're like a more violent person, is that they're like, this person is obviously the problem. If we can just figure out how to solve this, then all these problems will stop. And if they just keep happening and they keep getting worse as more time goes on, they just never have the chance to like really stop and realize what they're really doing. Like that's why like separation, like no contact, is useful, because it forces you to not talk to them for a while, where you start to notice the things in your life that aren't there when they're not there anymore. And you're able to like stop and breathe and like really think about what you're doing and like what is happening, so that you don't handle things the same way anymore. And like that's why that stuff is useful. Like I didn't talk to my mom for 5 years, and our relationship is like way better now than it ever was before, because it's way healthier. She doesn't like feel like she needs to help me in the same way. Like when she sees that I'm upset about something, she just says like, I'm sorry that happened, but she doesn't do more than that. That's a healthy attachment. But it took like, all this time to get there.
Percy gets repeatedly punched in the face, and then Tyson saves him because
Hmm.
Luke gets the opportunity to grab his sword again, and he raises it at at Percy about to stab, and he says, "You were never the one, it was always Thalia." And this is the scene that came out in one of the teasers where a trident comes in and stops the sword. Which I feel like they almost did just to tease us and make us think it was Poseidon. Because,
Hmm.
of course, we know that Tyson doesn't traditionally fight with the trident.
Yep, definitely. And I loved so much that not only does Tyson, I just love how not even over, just protective. It's not overprotective, it's just protective of Percy Tyson is, because he not only knocks Luke off, he literally like you just see Luke go like flying away
Yes.
from Percy. He's like, bye, see you later. It was just
Yeah.
like, that's what happens when you mess with a Cyclops. He will cut you. He doesn't care. And Percy needs somebody like that in his life. That
Exactly.
that is always like at like 1000 about like that was one I loved in episode 7 too, that Percy has to like tell Tyson not to like go after Clarice when she hurts him, and he's like, no, I'm fine, because Tyson's always ready.
Yes.
As you would like, yeah, it's very sweet to see them like that. So that was fun. I was really glad that it was Tyson that ended up being the one that stopped it and helped him, because Tyson's the best.
Yes, so Tyson literally knocks him off of Half-Blood Hill. And I mean, at least the way it seems, I don't think he ever comes back to battle because later we find out he disappeared. But
Oh
like
wait,
we
wait, wait.
never really see him again.
That's the thing that happened because of Disney being little bitches about money. The
Okay.
party ponies were supposed to come in and save them like in the book, but they cut it out because of money. And I
Oh my
was like,
gosh.
you idiots, because it that was one of the things when I was watching the episode. It does not make any sense at all that Chiron is like, oh, Luke just disappeared, and everyone is like, I saw people trying to figure out like, what does that mean, and I'm like, it's literally just because I will never. Oh my god, I will not. I like, granted, like this season, it's weird to think about like production wise, because this season was completely finished with filming by the time they won 8 Emmys. That happened like a month after this was done. And they were, I don't know, like they were the number one show for 2024. And so you would think that Disney would have some idea of that while they were filming. But it was things that they would have found out when they were already in production. And so I hope that they have more money for season 3. But um, there was something in the we'll talk about later with Zeus that made me wonder if they didn't give them more money.
Mhm.
That we'll talk about later. But yeah, it's just, oh my god, that actually makes a lot of sense, because I was just, otherwise it's just like, why the heck would Luke and his army just leave after they were about to, you know, win and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was just so weird. But is this the part when Alison starts beating up a tree? Or is that
Kind
later?
of, yeah. So we have Annabeth Grover and Clarice. They ride in on the chariot, and Allison shoots Annabeth with an arrow. She takes an
Mhm.
arrow to the
Mhm.
shoulder, a very non-lethal place. I feel like it's a media trope of like you get hit in a certain spot in your shoulder where there's not really anything important there.
Mhm.
And that's the exact spot that Annabeth gets hit in. Annabeth's telling everybody, "Don't worry about me, worry about the fleece. Don't worry about me, don't worry about me." And so Allison, at this point, she decides we need more monsters. And despite the fact that Luke showed her exactly how to let people in, despite the fact that they don't even have to do this one at a time, like they can have a bunch of demigods let in, like their own monster companion. She decides the best way to get monster reinforcement is to take down the tree, which it's one hell of a tree, and we see them trying to hack away with it with little axes. It's like you guys aren't doing anything to this tree. It's a little
No.
laughable.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It was just like, okay, I'm not really sure what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think we
One,
just wanted so much chaos in this scene.
yeah, and one part I will say about the part with Annabeth that was nice was that Clarice runs, like, comes back to like check on her, So it's like showing that she understands, she also has like formed healthy attachment and is no longer able to just be like the mission or nothing. Like instead she's going to check on Annabeth too to make sure she's okay instead of going after the fleece, because she's like learned that she there are people now that she like wants to trust and things like that. So that was nice. I don't remember what happens
Yes.
next anymore. If it's Thalia or something
Okay,
else.
so Percy comes up with a plan to save the tree, which this is a scene we were like, what is happening here when we saw the little snippets of it, which
Hmm.
is Percy stabs the fleece with Clarice's spear, but he's doing it because, like we have all of these demigod fights happening all around. And so he tells Clarice finish the quest, hands her the spear with the fleece on it, and then she's able to throw it and spear it onto the tree itself where the magic is then able to spread. And so this is one of those parts where it's like it's really confusing how the battle ends because we don't see the end of the battle, but like everybody stops fighting. The people who were trying to cut down the tree all stop as well because like the moment the fleece touches it and the gold starts spreading on the tree and stuff. Um, they just take a step back and when Thalia emerges from the tree, she's screaming, never, and lightning strikes, which I don't know if that lightning was meant to be coming from her. I think it was like her
Hmm.
being so startled and surprised that,
Hmm.
it has kind of like an emotional moment of like, can't
Hmm.
even control my own power. But that lightning strike, because Percy was the only person moving on the entire battlefield trying to get closer and see what was happening. He ends up standing right in front of her as she's screaming this. And so the lightning strike, it goes through her, it hits Percy, and both of them go down.
Hmm.
So we don't see how the battle ends. We cut to a dream sequence right after this. And yeah, it's not really ever answered the end of the battle, even the answer that Percy gets when he wakes up. But let's talk about the dream sequence really quick first.
Hmm.
So he kind of he realizes he's in a dream. He's in Camp Half Blood, like at the shore, and he looks completely healed in the dream, which is the first thing you notice, of course, because he just got out of this crazy battle. But then his dad's there, and his dad is telling him how he really needs his son by his side, his son being Tyson. Um, and I think this is the moment where all of us who love Tyson were crying in the
Hmm.
episode
Hmm.
because this is where they decided to stick in the part about Percy and Tyson. Like, because in the books, the way it goes down is during the second chariot race, Percy was about to say he was sorry to Tyson for like being embarrassed of him. But before he can even get to saying it, Tyson's like telling him the thing that he says here, which is, like being on the streets was really hard before I found you. And I prayed for a friend and I got sent a brother. And they kind of tied it in with this little thing with Poseidon because he's like happy to go serve in the forges. He's just thinking like, I owe you so much, like you gave me the best brother ever.
Hmm. Yeah. I loved how Daniel delivered the line, because you could tell that Tyson was like stopping because he was trying not to cry when he was telling Percy that, like how that he just asked for a friend and then he got something so much better than he could have ever possibly like expected. Um, and it was just so acted so well. Like that whole part with Daniel was ridiculous. I was like, that was really, really good. Can people like know who he is and like
Yes.
put
Yeah,
him in
Daniel needs an Emmy for that one.
yeah, he needs something. He needs more parts, because that was just so well done. Him as Tyson is probably the best thing about this season, because he's just does it so well in a way that is not easy all the time for people to be able to pull off, to balance all those different parts of Tyson. And it was
Hmm.
really sweet to see that scene from the books, like so similar to it, just slightly different. in a way that I liked.
Hmm.
Like I liked that it was a little bit different because they talked so much in this season about, especially with Tyson in the beginning, when Percy felt like betrayed by him because he thought that he knew who he was the whole time. And so if he would have actually told him, like, I actually did know that you were Poseidon's son, like he did in the books, it wouldn't have come off as, it wouldn't have been as good of a thing. And so this time it was just Poseidon just like, help me find you, even though I didn't know you were even there. Um,
Yeah.
it's I'm sure that this is supposed to be a weird juxtaposition between Poseidon and Zeus. I will say this next part, it made me really sad when Tyson was talking about leaving, because I don't want Tyson to leave. Like literally me reading Percy Jackson books beyond book 2 is me just hoping that anytime they go somewhere that Tyson will show up. And
Yes.
like I mentioned that all the time when we were reading the first 5 books, like, can Tyson show up? Where's Tyson? Is Tyson okay? And like I've said this before, but they can break canon as much as they want if they want to put like Tyson in more than he actually is in like the season.
Yes.
Like that's fine. You're absolutely fine for doing that. And I don't know where this came from, because nobody gives credit for things on Twitter, but one of the kids on Twitter posted a video. It was like the cast, and they were all like hugging. But it was like Daniel being so much taller than everybody. And I have no idea like where they were even, or when this even happened or anything, but it was Daniel standing there and Walker is like hugging him, and all the other cast members come in to like hug him, and then they back away, and Walker's still sitting there hugging him, hugging Daniel, like he never moves for like 30 seconds. He's
So
just
sweet.
standing there hugging him. And so I'm like, I don't know if that's from when they were saying goodbye for season 2, or if that's when like Daniel showed up for the first time when they were filming season 3. I have no idea where that video came from, but it was really sweet to see it regardless, because I was just like, that's so cute.
Yeah.
But the thing
One
I
thing
was
I wanted to mention really quick here is like, so there is a little like continuity error in here potentially in when Poseidon's telling Tyson he needs his help. He says the forge of my brother
oh yeah,
Hephaestus is underwater. So first of all, Hephaestus's forge is not underwater. Like I
it's
don't
not.
think he has much to do with Poseidon's forges. And then second of all, it's the my brother Hephaestus part that got a lot of people, because Hephaestus is more of a nephew in any version, right? He's either Hera's child alone, or he is a Hera and Zeus child, and I believe Rick Riordan chose Hera and Zeus for his
Mhm.
mythology of it. And so he would be a nephew. My only thinking is like the only way that this is potentially like okay that he called him brother is if it's more of a colloquialism of
That,
like, you
that's
know
how I
how
took it.
Indian people, like if there's someone that's older than you call them like auntie or uncle.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it seemed like to me. And because I will make the obvious point too that Hephaestus's forges are in Mount St. Helens. That's where they are in book 4 at least. And that's like why they're
Yes.
there, and everything. And so I don't know, who knows, but the part from the Poseidon Percy scene that I felt interesting feelings about was when he starts talking about how he was born out of love. Like listen, I understand that because Toby Stevens is good looking, like genuinely because he's good looking and because he's a good actor, that people want to like Poseidon. I don't like Poseidon.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. Like episode 3 of season 1 is about how he raped Medusa. I don't want to hear about how he loves Sally after they introduce the idea that he raped Medusa or he raped anyone. Do I want to hear about how much a rapist loves somebody? Like, no. And I don't want to hear about him saying that to his son, that he brought into this world with a single mother that had no family when she was 19 years old. And he knew that he would be putting him in the middle of this mess, and that Zeus has been trying to kill Percy since he was a baby. Like, and was probably trying to hurt him before he was ever even born. I know that they're trying to show like Poseidon being the non-unhinged demonic version of like Zeus, very obviously, but this is like part of the issue that I had with how they wrote this episode is that it feels like you're dropping an anvil on my head. I am not
Yeah.
stupid. Your audience is not unintelligent. You don't need to make it so obvious how you're supposed to feel about somebody. It feels insulting to me that they made it so overly obvious how you're supposed to feel about Kronos and Luke, in the same way with this with Poseidon, and then at the end with Zeus. I'm just like, people can figure this out. You don't need to write an episode for them like they're 5. Like, they're not 5. Even
Yeah.
5-year-olds could watch this and figure out that Poseidon is nicer than Zeus, and because of what they do. Like, you don't need to make it so like over the top in a good way versus a bad way. Because I get it what they're trying to do with them. Like, it has to be a comparison between the two, considering that the scenes are like one right after another. Like, this scene happens and then he wakes up and hears about what Zeus did. And so it has to be that, but it's just like, oh my God, it doesn't have to be so, like, can Disney relax? I'm assuming that's them making them be so like overly bluntly obvious. People are not, this is a whole other rant, but this is like something that keeps happening where recently, very recently, within the last couple of days, I can't remember where it's from. There was an interview with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck because they did a movie together, and they were talking about when they did interviews for the movie that Netflix told them when they did like an action movie or something for Netflix, I think, and why they were being asked about this. And Netflix told them that they want them to say, like, repeat like things in the plot like many, many times, like 5 times or something like that, because they think that people are watching things and they're when they're on their phone and they're not paying attention to what's going on
Yeah.
screen. Now, like, can somebody tell studios that people aren't stupid? Like, can you please tell them that we're not stupid? Like, please, like, because that's the only way to interpret that sort of thing, that they're telling creative people like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, or some of the top stars in Hollywood, that they have to put in them over explaining things in the plot of their action movies because they don't think people are going to be able to follow the plot. We can just rewind.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not really paying attention and we miss it, we can just rewind, because it's so aggravating, and like that kind of stuff is so aggravating every time I see it. Like, I just am like, people don't need this. You can just tell us one time and we can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't figure it out, we can ask somebody else and they can help us figure it out. Like, it doesn't have to be so like overly blunt. I just really don't like that, because I just am like, why they didn't write like their audience couldn't figure it out in season 1. I don't like that they're now it has to be like Disney making them do it, because they didn't do it in season 1, and it was a kid show then too. And so it's just like, can somebody tell them to calm down? because they don't need to be so over the
Yeah.
top about it. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about this double screen phenomenon and studios kind of like writing to it for a while too now. And I guess my biggest argument for like not doing it is, why are we enabling it? You know,
Hmm.
like, I will acknowledge people do that a lot of times people have multiple. I do it. I do it all the time. You know, I'll be playing Switch with something on in the background, but that's why I have comfort shows. You know, like, I'll be playing Bob's Burgers that I've rewatched 10 million times when I'm doing double screen. When it's something that I actually want to pay attention to. I mean, that's part of the reason why I have to dodge spoilers with Percy Jackson. It's a thing that I've had to do all season, because I'm not somebody who's going to watch at midnight. At midnight, I'm usually actually doing work for my like part-time admin job. I don't
Hmm.
know why I put it off until nighttime every day. But because I'm sitting there doing work, I'm like, I'm not going to have Percy Jackson on in the background where I'm missing stuff. I'm going to wait until I could actually sit and watch this. And
Hmm.
so, like, usually it'll be because I've been dodging spoilers in the morning. I'll like sit down with my coffee, have just my phone out, and just watch the show.
Mhm.
Um, and I would love for them to make it so you actually have to pay attention again. That would be nice because so many of us with short form media have rotted our own brains that I think that a lot of us need to get back to that.
Well, yeah, and the thing that bothers me about that is that people pay attention to things when it's made well. Like, I don't feel like I need
Mhm.
to when I watch Percy this season, I would just like wake up in the morning, and whatever time I woke up, I would just get up and like go brush my teeth and then go watch it before I would even look at anything else on my phone. I would just open up the app and watch it. And so, and the whole time I was watching every episode, that I didn't like want to look away, or I didn't like want to stop watching and look at something else because I was engaged in what I was watching. And so it feels like studios have started to like
Mhm.
cut on actually paying creatives actual money so they can actually like eat and pay their rent and stuff, which they all have been doing.
Mhm.
And they're like, well, people aren't paying attention as much because it's not written well anymore. And it's like, no, it's because you're not paying people that know what they're doing anymore. You're not making a well-made product. And so people are bored because it sucks. Stop making things that suck.
Mhm.
Like, stop doing that. Just let people
Yes.
actually write what they want to write and be able to tell like good stories. People will go do that. They'll go see it a million times when they really like it and they feel invested in the story. That's how it works every single time. um like, people are waking up at two
Yes.
o'clock in the morning to watch this show, and like going back to bed for like 2 hours and then going to work for the rest of the day. Like, I didn't do that. I just like woke up. I would always wake up a little bit sooner than I usually would. I would always wake up at like 5:30 or 6 or something, just naturally, and I would just go watch it when I didn't have to work until like 9. But still, like, people really really want to watch something because it's made well, they're going to do it. You
Yeah.
don't have to do that if you actually take the time to find people that make something well and actually care about what they're making. That's honestly the main thing of it. Like,
Mhm.
Avatar Last Airbender is going to come out soon. And I like, just randomly, I meant to tell you this the other day, but I forgot, was I saw this our friend Sophia sent me this article, and I was like, that's some interesting marketing strategy that they're doing right now, because it was an article where somebody was just making stuff up, literally making something up, and wrote an article that said that like the original Avatar, creators that created the entire show, who left, that they wanted to do all of these things that they would never do, like kill Iroh and things like that. And it was an article being like, you don't understand. The people who left the show wanted to do way worse things. She sent that to me, and I was like, so how bad is this season? That you're like, this season must be really
Yeah.
bad. It must be really, really bad if you're coming out with an article like this before anyone even sees it, to like preempt people to be like, it could be worse, guys. And I was just like, okay, that's gotta be
Yeah.
that's
That's
not a good sign at all of whatever. And like, people are already talking about
yeah, I
Netflix
will
with
say
Stranger Things and stuff too.
yeah. I still haven't watched Stranger Things. I've already had the ending spoiled, and oh my gosh, that one was impossible to avoid spoilers. So, um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so going back to Poseidon's little speech here, the whole thing happens because Percy asks Poseidon, "Did you have me because of the great prophecy?" And Poseidon's answer was, "There are things that are bigger than the will of the gods, fate and love." Like, and it's kind of funny because when he was like, "There's things that are bigger than the or more powerful than the will of the gods," my first thought was Sally Jackson. Sally Jackson's more powerful. So Percy wakes up in the infirmary next.
Mhm.
It is 3 days after the fight. Thalia is laying in a bed next to him, and a couple things we find out. First of all, Chiron is back. Second of all, is that they used up most of the nectar stores. So, because Percy passes out on the battlefield, we don't see how it ends. The party pony scene didn't happen, apparently, now. Um, We don't know. We don't know what the end of that battle looked like. And it's impossible for me to imagine that there wasn't literal dead children. You know, like
Mhm.
it's really impossible to imagine with how the fighting looked. But using most of the store of nectar means that the ones that did make it out, they were pretty heavily injured.
Mhm. Yeah, it was probably a situation like
Yeah.
everyone was hurt.
When he wakes up, they take him to the big house. We find out Clarice is in charge of training the strike force against Kronos' army. And then we have this big moment with Chiron. So before we get into the big change that happens here, I want to talk about what it does for Chiron's character because I do somewhat enjoy what happens with Chiron's character in this scene. Um, First of all, there's something silly. There's Chiron saying, I regret not telling you about my connection with Kronos' suitor, which is like, Percy could have picked up Hesiod's Theogony and found that out himself. He didn't need you to tell him, Chiron. It's in all
Mhm.
of the books. It's fine.
Mhm.
Um, but Chiron then says, like, I've always tried to balance being this like in between the gods and the demigods and like trying to be a good example, trying to obey the gods. And right now I'm at odds with that. And so he's like, I need to tell you guys the truth of what really happened. And I do love what that does for Chiron's character, just the fact that he's having this moment of, I'm going to openly defy the gods because I care about you kids and I want you guys to have all the information.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of how we always described him,
Yeah.
as someone who plays that role
Yeah.
and does love all these kids and wants to protect them. And this is something where he feels like they would be in a less safe position, which I feel like is accurate if they didn't know what actually happened. And so he tells them. It's not like there were some people speculating that like he had a part in this too, that like he tried to convince Zeus to turn her into a tree, that he had like he was like working or like trying to get Zeus to do it, or was like helping, like they were coming up with a plan like together sort of thing. And so that is one thing that I'm glad never happened, that he wasn't doing that, because I didn't think he would. I think he would try to get Zeus to do it out of like desperation, to try to save her in any way possible.
Hmm.
But I didn't think that he would be like actually being like, oh, you should, because that's not who I thought Chiron was. And so I'm glad that we are right for protecting him all this time from people
Yeah.
who are always upset with him, that yeah, he
Yes.
doesn't want to do that.
I mean, yeah, my thought would have been if anything, it would have just been a save her, and he would have no idea what that actually means or how Zeus would even go about doing it. Um, but yeah, so we find out from Chiron that the Furies never fought at all. They were sent there by Hades to drive a bigger wedge between Thalia and Zeus. Um, the implication being they told her the entire prophecy and Zeus strikes them down. But Thalia, when she sees Zeus, she's like, it's too late. I already know everything. Um, and I don't know. It feels like it seems like we're missing something between Thalia and Zeus. Like there's something that's already happened that we've missed here because Thalia at first doesn't believe the prophecy. She says fake prophecy, and I thought it was all lies, in a way that almost sounds like they've talked about something about this before. Like it almost feels like this is a continuation of a conversation that they've had where she was like, I thought it was all lies.
Hmm.
Um, so
Well,
that kind
in
of
the
took me
scene
by surprise.
in the scene itself, Zeus tries to say like, oh, they're just lying to you to try to, my brothers or whatever is just trying to like turn you against me. And then he starts talking about the actual prophecy. And she's like, wait, I thought it was all a lie. And it's like her catching him in admitting that it's actually real, and that he didn't want her to know about it yet because she's
Hmm.
about to turn 16. And he says, like, it's a dangerous, 16 is like a, whatever he says, 16 is like a dangerous age or whatever. He says
Yeah.
to her at that point. And
Yeah, well, and when she calls him out on the I thought it was all lies, that's when he says the thing about I need to put a stop to your rebellious streak. And so it's kind of interesting. I mean, that characteristic of Zeus feels like the Zeus we know, of like you're challenging me and I know you're right, but like I'm not going to let you have it. Um, that part does feel spot on. But because she caught him in this lie now, she says, like, wait, first of all, hold on, let me take a step back. Um, After he's like, let me put an end to your rebellious ways, he wants her to go to Camp Half-Blood, and he's telling her like everybody's going to be so great to you there because you're my daughter, and like you don't even understand the treatment you're going to get, basically, is kind of how he was trying to put it. And she's like, I don't want to be your daughter, I don't care about this, the only demigods I care about are the ones I just dropped off, so I'm going to go get them, screw you, I will never be your weapon. And as she's turning away from him, that's when he turns her into the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know we both feel two different ways about this. You've explained already you don't like the idea of her being scarier, of her having more fuel to potentially join Kronos' side. The thing that I got from this, and I feel like it's the microcosm of something that happened recently. So it's kind of interesting. Like right when we wrapped with Tatiana, I got a missed call from my mom. And that one was one that was like, don't know if it was on purpose, don't know if it was on accident, didn't leave a message, was just like, this is weird. And it was the second time that I had gotten a call from my mom in like a week. And the week before, that one was a pocket dial, legitimate pocket dial, because I got a voicemail where she was talking to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But then the day before this episode airs, I get an actual call from my mom, like an actual call where she called, she left a message where she was clearly leaving a message, and it was just, "Hi, how are you doing? Bye." And so what I got from Thalia in this sequence with Zeus was the idea of being a golden child but not wanting it, of actually rejecting it. Because here he is saying like, you are my golden child. You are going to have this special place and all you have to do is take it. She's just like, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. And that I can relate to that so much at this particular point in my life.
I hate the ending, changing it with Thalia, like I mentioned before, because it makes her scary. And the reason why I really hate that, the correlation you're making, is that if things like this happen to you, you are scary. And that makes you a bad person. It makes you a worse person. Because the reason why they amped this up to like this, to this level with Zeus, is so that you could believe more that she would join Luke. Feels like a betrayal to me personally that almost no one else would feel, because it's like, how do you think that feels for people who have experienced things like this before? The ending narration is Percy saying that she's his biggest nightmare. And I'm like, so she's bad. She's a bad person because her dad did this to her? Is
Yeah.
that what we're going with? That she's a bad person because Zeus effectively killed her for 7 years, like magically, granted, in a way, but still, he's controlling whether she deserves to live or die by deciding if she gets to exist as a person, depending on if she makes him happy or not. And like, there are obviously things in this scene that was very triggering for me, like especially her telling him like, I don't want to be your daughter. Like, and I don't want to be your weapon. And no, and then him punishing her for that. And especially because everywhere I go now, I just see people talking about that. And it just reminds me of all the things my dad did to punish me for doing the exact same thing. It felt like the show was betraying me, because it's, once again, it's like, I can't enjoy this for what it is. I can't enjoy the storyline and even try to talk about it that much as like just like a storyline choice, because it just reminds me like I'm different. I'm different from everybody. And because everybody else can look at this and think that it's exciting because how it changes her character. Or it's not even that Zeus wouldn't be capable of this, because he obviously is, but it's just that is really what it is that makes me just always want to cry all the time now, to think like it's just something there that tells me like you're different from everybody else, because everybody else can enjoy this for a storyline scene and you can't. And it's not because of anything I did, it's because of my dad. And so he's dead, he's still ruining my life. This is something that is one of my favorite things, and now I can't enjoy it the way that I normally would, because it reminds me of him, and I don't know how it could not. Because there were times when I thought that would happen to me. I did therapy for a couple months when I was 12, and because I was suicidal. And my therapist was doing therapy things and was trying to ask me like what was like a hope for like my life in the future. And she asked me what that dream thing was, because it was like a goal, in therapy, to convince me over the time that I was in therapy that I could still like reach that goal. I didn't have anything. I lied to her. I made something up because there was nothing. Like, I sat there for a little bit and tried to think of something and could not think of anything. And so I just lied to her. I don't even know what I said. I remember saying something about how I wanted to get married, because I just knew that's what people wanted, like people expected you to say. Even at that age, I did not want to get married at all. But
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
why I
like,
laugh, because I'm like, I can't even see like young
no.
Shannon thinking like, this is what I want one day.
Yeah, I said things that I knew that like I was supposed to want, basically. And so I knew what I
Mhm.
was supposed to want. And so I said what I thought would sound good so that she wouldn't ask me or realize that I was lying. A lot of the dynamic with Thalia and Luke, the whole reason, the whole way that the the Furies are like this personification of all these things that are happening to Luke in his life because he's out of control with his rage.
Mhm.
And they keep running into all these monsters where it gets to this out of control situation where she ends up fighting the Furies and dies, in the original version anyway. That happens because Luke is out of control. And it's such a good way to show how people, like, that to me is showing like the cycle of abuse and intergenerational trauma, where Luke is like doing these things that are similar to the gods, but he doesn't realize that he's doing them or how he's affecting other people, because he doesn't think he's responsible for them. So many things about this season that I thought this finale could like help resolve, and they didn't resolve them. Like, I don't like the fact that for half of the season, Percy is convinced that he's a scary, horrible person. It feels like they basically essentially said in, Craig Silverstein's eventually said in interviews, that they added in the prophecy so that he would be afraid of himself. And I'm like, then you shouldn't have brought it up. If the reason why you brought up the prophecy early was so Percy could spend half the season thinking that he's a monster because he loves people, only to then get to the end of the season where then he's afraid of Thalia because he thinks that Thalia is going to kill him or something, or join Luke or whatever he thinks Thalia might do because of the prophecy too. I'm like, then why did you bring this up early? Just to try to convince everybody that your main characters are actually scary, bad people. And I get like it's like the prophecy, they're afraid of the prophecy, but nobody ever corrects them about that. Like, the Percy and Annabeth relationship right now is set up like it's perfectly rational and fine that Percy is apparently going to turn into a violent person to protect Annabeth only and doesn't care about anyone else. But it's just, that's not a healthy relationship dynamic for them to have. But it's set up that way, and it's set up in a way where it clearly is written in the way that you're supposed to think that's fine. And you're supposed to think that Luke and Thalia are fine, and that everything with them was fine because Zeus is a literal monster. And like, yes, obviously Zeus is always a monster, that's his character, but when you introduce this sort of thing into this world, that he is willing to basically kill his child because she just told him no. Like, I've been saying this to Mandi, like, I have no idea why anybody is on God's side. Like, why they would stay at camp if they knew about this. Like, it makes me feel like the kids at camp are stupid. Because if I knew that the head person of this camp was capable of something like that to the point that he did that to his daughter, that just through a miracle was able to come back, like, it's not like, I doubt that he would have ever brought her back. He might have said he was going to. They lie a lot, especially to make it sound like they're nicer people than they are. That's like the abusive parent version of like, oh, I'll help you go to college one day. And then when you get old enough, they don't help you get loans and you have to all figure it out yourself. And so, like, I doubt that he was ever going to let her out because she would tell everybody as soon as she got out of there. But, like, what he did, of course she would. Like, how could she not? Like, he did that to her. And it makes me sad that they changed it like this, because it changes a lot of the focus stuff on Luke instead of, like I said before, most people thought, not just us, most people thought that the setup for Titan's Curse would be setting up Luke being a full-on villain. But instead, it's all about Thalia being dangerous and scary and Zeus being the most evil bastard you can possibly ever imagine. It doesn't matter what Luke is doing. It doesn't matter that he's killed children. He just turned his daughter into a tree because she said no. It's not even because she was doing anything wrong. She wasn't hurt. She wasn't doing anything over the top bad. She wasn't threatening him. She just told him no and didn't want to talk to him anymore. Like, that is scary. And I know that this show cannot be taking this seriously, because there's no way they can take that seriously and continue on as the show is going to be. And so me watching it, I'm just like, why did you do this? Why did you make me feel like an outcast in this place that I like to be in, so that you could do this to Thalia and make her be so scary? I don't understand why they felt like it was necessary. You just made Luke's job so easy. Like, so easy.
They did.
He doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything. He can just sit there and be like, Zeus turned his daughter into a tree to spite her. Like, why wouldn't you join Kronos? At least he didn't do that.
This is why I wanted to start out with, like, we have different opinions on this, and they're both valid because we're both coming from to them with different traumas. You know, me with the golden child trauma of seeing, like, here's someone offering her ultimate golden child and she says no in his face. And I have had relatives like get mad at me for not wanting, you know, like the golden child treatment before. But like with you, it also is extremely valid that like seeing a dad like that, it didn't need to happen as dramatic as it did. And like especially when a lot of us were expecting that it was gonna be an actual battle, because like the one thing that I kind of don't know how to feel is like this changes a lot about Zeus, but it also changes something about Hermes, or not Hermes, about Hades, where I'm just like,
Why
why
would
would
you
he
do
send
that?
the Furies when, yeah, like when the prophecy could eventually, like, okay, so here's where you get into the weird technicalities of things. Technically speaking, Hades is not an Olympian because he lives in the underworld. He doesn't live on Olympus. And so like I don't know, did he think he was going to join Kronos' side, which I guess wouldn't be extremely unheard of, seeing as the lightning thief part of that is Ares wants to join Kronos' side.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's not the Hades that we know. You know, like, yes, he didn't necessarily want Zeus to win, but I don't think he wanted Kronos to win either. Like, it's just never
No.
even brought up that he would join Kronos or the Titan side.
And one thing I wanted to say quick, dislike about the season 3, is that there was, I don't even know where this came from. Our friend Sophia only sent me the part that wouldn't upset me, basically. And it was the part of the article where they're saying that they're still figuring out if Zeus is going to be in season 3. And that like confused us greatly because of how big Zeus is at the end of the season with the winter solstice stuff. And the only thing I could come up with is that might be just for money, because it would cost a lot of money to have that many actors in one scene together. And so they might be trying to figure out how to do it in a way where they don't need every single god all in the same room together, even though we all would want to see that if Disney is being a jerk, which they are when it comes to like money stuff like this, that they would try to save some by doing it a slightly different way, which is fine. Like, I guess after all that, the thing I wanted to like almost just make abundantly obvious is that I feel like a lot of people just assume if you don't like something because it's changed that you're being like a book purist or whatever. And honestly, like, this made me realize how fucking selfish those people are, that they've decided that the show is bad because it's not what they want. I am sad that the show is not what I want. I'm sad that I can't take part in it the way that everybody else is. I'm really sad about that. Just want to make that point for the annoying adult Percy Jackson fans that are being incredibly selfish and making everything about them. Like, I'm sad that I'm not a part of this, but I'm not pretending like the show is bad just because I didn't get what I want. Grow up. Like, just because the show didn't do what you want
Yeah.
doesn't mean you get to ruin the time for everybody else. This is not about you. Maybe having two different perspectives will be helpful for people when they watch us, so they can like hear both sides and then figure out how they feel about these sort of things. Because it'll be interesting to what we learn about Titan's Curse going forward now. I can only hope that that Disney actually gives him more money at some point.
Where's Luke?
Like, it's the worst way she could have possibly woken up. Like, that's really honestly what I was thinking, other than potentially waking up on the Princess Andromeda.
I did really like that the scene with her and Annabeth was very sweet. It felt really great that they, like, the two black characters that are both girls, get that scene together for the first time. I was really glad because it just feels more intense, I guess, emotions wise, in that way that they get to bond like that and both be basically somehow almost the same age.
Where is he?
A lot of what happens next with her depends on like that part, the part that we don't see, because it's going to depend. How did they explain to her that Luke turned evil? What are they going to explain to her that he's doing? And is that actually going to be enough? Like, is that actually going to be enough to where she realizes he's a lost cause? Which, as we know, the reason she really, really has to come to terms with him being a lost cause is because he does kidnap Annabeth in the whole next book.
That's always the most important part of Titan's Curse, is that is her doing that, but also the fact that right after that is when Percy's thinking about how he hopes that Luke dies, because he's like, Zoe deserves to be alive, Luke doesn't. How it's so, and he literally thinks like how wrong it is that Luke is probably still alive and she isn't, when she deserves to be here much more than him. And it's like, that's where you should be with thinking about him by that point. And so if they get there some other like backwards way with how they've changed things, then that's salvageable for me. But it's a matter of them actually like getting there. They have to get there.
Like a little teaser for Titan's Curse in a post-credit scene, or like a during the credit scene, where it's basically just the dance and Annabeth like taking Percy onto the dance floor. Um, no hint of Thalia in the background. Like, I tried looking for her in there, but I mean, in order for things to still go the way that they go in the books, they need to somehow convince her at least temporarily to be on their side, even if she is still waffling between like, can I still save my old situationship, or is that completely over now? Um, because like, I mean, that still is a thing in this version of the story. The way I see them salvaging this though is that Luke has to actually be hardcore about like kidnapping Annabeth. He has to actually do something ruthless when it comes to that.
Mhm.
And with Thalia, the one thing I will say is if they pull it off correctly, her choice to join the Hunters isn't going to look like I just don't want to turn 16 because I don't trust myself. It's going to be, I'm not choosing Zeus sides. I'm not choosing Kronos' side. I'm choosing me. I'm choosing
Hmm.
me. And I don't want anything to come between that ever again. Which kind of makes more sense as to why she would swear off romantic love, you know?
Hmm. That's fine. She can be an asexual person.
Yeah.
Anyone who stays in the Hunters, I just name them as being asexual because they
Hmm.
basically are. They you
Yeah.
definitely are. So in my head, you are. So-
If you guys happen to see this before, everybody wish Shannon a happy birthday. Let us know what you guys thought. Again, please don't pick sides. Like, both of us don't want that, but we do want to hear your guys' mixed opinions. We know the fandom has mixed opinions about how all of this went. We're open to all of it. We're also still number one Luke haters, so that is always welcome in our comment section as well.
Mhm. We'll see you guys soon.